Hmm. Okay. Oh. Hi, Darian. Thanks for coming by. This is one weird kind of setup because I am used to Zoom and kind of sharing projects through that, but this one way kind of setup is a little bit like odd. So anyhow, thanks for joining me. I did just go through my little spiel about my project, but I have all this stuff here. So if you would like to know more about this dandelion thing that I just shared about today, let me know. No, I can't. No, I can't see you. But all I see, yeah, with it's not like Zoom where you have the little thumbnails. I just see the chat. But okay, great. Yay. My first visitor. This is anyhow, this is just weird, but I'm determined to try this out because, other people with fewer skills than me have figured this out. So I'm going to do it too. And what I love about the YouTube thing is that I can stream it and then I can replay it, and it's all in this one place. And thanks. And so it's going to be right next to where all of my videos are, as opposed to, streaming on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. So anyhow, here, this is your very own personal lesson about how to make these dandelions. So this is the one that I made today. I've tried making a couple of them. I don't know. This project has been around. I did have. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I did kind of experiment with this a while ago, but I don't think I ever posted clear directions. I had a thing about how to draw dandelions because they do look kind of pretty just all by themselves. And then I figured out a way to use kind of like the rubber cement when I wanted to do watercolor to kind of mask it out, because that was kind of an easy foolproof way. And then I also somewhere along the line, figured out how to use the bleeding tissue paper. And that worked really great because it just lets you do this gradation, and it's kind of foolproof because, you know, if you've been, I know you're with a room full of students often, they tend to overdo it, especially if they're young and they want to do a pretty, you know, rainbow or something, and they'll put a lot of paint on, and then they'll get overexcited about mixing it and it turns brown. And before you know it, you know, their good intentions just kind of get overdone. Oh, okay. You have bleeding tissue paper? That's great, because I've used it. I used it after school. I don't think I ever used it with a bunch of students unless it was a special project or something. Oh, it's great. It's amazing stuff because, like I said, it's just kind of foolproof for getting that gradual color, and it's easier to use too. You don't have a whole, you know, tray of paint that they can mix up with all the colors and things like that. And then this other thing, I'll show you what I experimented with last night. Like, here's like one other color variation where you can use the orange. This is actually light orange and dark orange. Some of the colors look kind of similar, but then this is a magenta strip that I put up at the top. So, and then after I did this, I thought, oh, if there's, I cut my strips about this wide, and then you just add water and you layer them going all the way up. And if you have like 6, you could do rainbow colors too. Although I would kind of stick to maybe 2 or 3 colors because they do kind of mush together. If you had 6 colors, they might just kind of all run together. It might be a little bit too much, but you could certainly do 3 and make it look really pretty. So here's my process. I started with, that's so nice to talk and know somebody's there, because I did this whole thing to an empty room because I thought, well, I'm going to make a replay. So thank you for coming, Darian. This is the paper that I found on Amazon because I was searching, and this, not that I'm partial to this brand or anything, but they have this crazy sale right now. $11 for all of this. It's insane. That would be like $30 if you went to Michael's. Oh, no problem. And so anyhow, what I wanted to make clear to anybody that hadn't done this before, you probably know this already, watercolor papers makes a huge difference, whether you're doing this or you're doing a watercolor painting. You just can't get the bright, pretty colors on drawing paper, even mixed media paper that tries to do that. It's better than nothing. But if you can get your hands on really good watercolor paper, that's what makes those colors just pop. So I started with that. Then if you're familiar with it, I was going to tell people too, sometimes people get excited and think, oh, tissue paper, that's all I need. But I try to make it really clear. It has to say bleeding tissue paper. And these days you can only find it like Amazon. It's in the art supply or something like that. It's not in, you know, with where you buy gift wrapping things at all. And so you have to get the bleeding tissue paper. And but once you get it, there's all these colors that are in here. And so what I did is I cut strips, and I cut them about the width of my paper that I need, and about this long because it seemed to be the most manageable. So anything bigger might be hard to keep wet, and anything smaller might feel kind of tedious. So that's about 1 inch tall, and it goes like enough to go over your entire paper in one swoop like this, like that. So what I did is I first drew with my marker, and you do need, of course, to have a permanent marker so it doesn't bleed. There's lots of different ones these days, but it's something ultra fine tip. So I just drew this really simple. I'm going to see if you have questions. Oh, show it again, please. Oh, the watercolor paper. Oh, yeah, this is, here's the brand. I think maybe they bought too much or something like that. It's called, oh, You Create watercolor paper, super heavyweight, 140 pounds. It's really extra heavy. And 50 sheets, and it's $11.18. The link is on my post that I just shared today. So that'll send you there. But yeah, it's, I mean, because it's extra thick, that's why it's so thick here. I guess anything, so it's 50 sheets of paper. So that would be like 2 classes if you have 225, you know, student classes. But still, for a special project, that's really cheap. let's see. Yeah, okay, so that's the sale for that. And oh, you're welcome. I'm going to get good at reading chats and talking at the same time, so it's good practice for me. So again, when you're drawing, if you have students, they might want to draw first in pencil, because I know a lot of kids are kind of hesitant about just drawing with marker, but it is a lot to erase. So anyhow, you'll have to make a judgment call. It is pretty simple. Just in my video that I have shows, draw the centers first, draw the curved stem below, and then draw the radial seed stems going out. Leave some space between, don't make them too close, because you need to then come back and put these little caps on. I do it as like a U shape and then a little V shape in the inside with little dots at the end, so they look kind of fancy. So I drew that with my marker, and then I added just a couple of these that are blowing away, that if you want to make a wish or something like that. And that's the drawing, and it's done then with the marker. Then after that comes the rubber cement, this stuff. And I used to use it a lot in art school. It's still around these days, but it's just not used with kids. It does say not safe for children. So, but what I did is I used to use this after school, because then I had older students and I had aides that could, like either hold the container, or you could actually do it for them if they were little ones, because all you need to do next is to take this rubber cement, this gooey stuff, wipe off the excess, and turns out these cheap little brushes on the ends make the perfect scratchy little paint. So when you go over it, my video shows this too, you go over each dandelion, and then I go over it, I'm going to dribble, go over it a couple of times, because you want it to be pretty blocked out. Take your best guess at blocking, making it pretty solid, but not making it totally solid, because my preference is to have a little bit of see-through stuff in there. Oh yeah, I use this stuff all the time when I do 4-H projects. I don't know if that relates to you, but like when you wanted to have something, you wanted to glue paper down and you didn't want it wrinkly, that rubber cement was like a lifesaver. So you brush that over this. It'll dry in just a few minutes. It will feel a little bit tacky, but it doesn't take long. You certainly don't need to let it dry overnight or anything. Then the next step is to use your brush. What did I do with my paintbrush now? Oh, here it is. This is my favorite paintbrush, my Crayola one. And you use a little container water, and you just get this wet here so that it sticks. And so, or in this case, it'd be doing I have a blue strip here. If you get it wet and then lay the strip on top of it, and then get it wet again so that it's really saturated, that's all you need to do to cover all of this. So you overlap it and make your layers. And then at some point I switched over to green. And then, and what I did is it looked wet, but when I was all done, I even got my water and I went over a little bit more, because if there's any little dry spots, that the color's not going to seep out. So what happens is that color from the tissue just runs right into that paper, and it turns into like instant paint. It's great. The only drawback is that, like, when you pick it up with your fingers, it will stain your fingers for like, a little bit. But to me, it's a fair trade-off to not having, squirt out or pour cups of paint that get spilled and things like that. So what I did is I got this all wet, let it set just for like 5 minutes or so, because you don't want it totally totally dry. But you do want to give it a few minutes to kind of have that color seep in there. Then you pick up that whole wet mess, and like what I did is I put it right back into my water container. And what will probably happen is it'll probably look mostly like this, but there might be some little white spots where the color just didn't quite go through. But that's why you want to do this while it's still wet, because while it's wet, you can just take your brush and fill in any of those white spots, because to me, it just looks nice when these white puff balls are like the main thing that you see, and everything else is full of color. So that's why you want to do it, during the same class. I wouldn't do it and then come back the next day, because then everything will be dry and you won't be able to fill in those little spots. But after that, then it's going to be kind of damp for a bit. I would maybe wait then and come back the next day and rub off the rubber cement, because it's going to be sticky on here. But the great thing about it is all you'd have to do is rub it with your fingers, and then it turns into those little balls, and then you brush it away, and your paper is nice and smooth, and it looks like a really cool mask that didn't, cost a ton of money. And certainly for older kids that know not to, be reckless with this stuff, you could trust them with using rubber cement. Oh, could it stay on? Oh, yeah, I'm sure it could stay on for a week, because it's not like anything else that's going to get. Once it's dry, and it's just kind of sticky. Oh, okay, your class is on Monday. Yeah, you could do it and then come back, because if you try to rub it while it's damp, it might tear if somebody got too aggressive with it. And my paper, especially this thicker stuff, it stayed damp for like a half hour. So yeah, that would be a good idea to just paint, do the tissue paper, remove the tissue paper, and then let it dry until the next class, and then rub it off like that. That would be cool. Sure. Yeah, and then I don't know how old students you have, but I thought, one thing I was kind of debating, like these stems, the first one I drew, I filled it in with black so they showed up more, but then they looked too dark, because obviously dandelions aren't made with black stems. So this one I made see-through, but then I thought one other compromise would be, like, if you had older students and they wanted to make these white, I can kind of understand the kind of urge to do that. Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. You told me that special needs. Oh, that's great. Okay, so then you probably want to keep it simple, because I thought if you had somebody that was kind of detail oriented and want to make these white, you probably could take a little toothpick or something and put rubber cement on there too, but that'd be kind of fussy. The other thing that I realized just when I was making this picture, like, let's say you're putting the brush on it and you're brushing it, and like I made a blob here by accident, and I thought, oh no, I don't want to have a white spot there. But what I did is I just waited until it was dry, because it's just kind of gooey went for just a few minutes. I waited till it was dry, and that extra part, then you just rub that off. So you do have a chance to kind of proof it before you do the paint on top of it too, because that'll happen where, especially if your container, if this is a new one and it's really full, by the time you take the brush over here, it might go blob, blob, blob. But it's not the end of the world, because you can just get rid of that before you paint. So that's, oh, I'm glad you like it. I would love to see what happens with your students, or with your special needs, age 18 to 22. I forgot. So they're older adults. What I think is so. Oh, thanks. I'm glad to hear that. What I like about the tissue paper, like I said, is that I'm famous. Oh, thank you. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. Thanks, though. This tissue paper, you could try so many different things, especially if you had students that, if they can handle the water and do that step really easily, then having these strips already made, so that all they have to do is, get this wet and then lay their colors on top. What I like is that like I said, they can't really overdo it, because I've seen so many, the younger students that want to paint and want to do a rainbow look, or just at least even just two colors, they just get too excited and they start to stir it all together. And it takes some maturity, I think, or something, or to know that you have to kind of, even if you're just using watercolor paint, you have to be you can't overdo it. You have to be restrained, I guess is the best word. But that doesn't happen when you're in first grade. You get excited over painting. But so what I'm thinking about this stuff is that you can have kids paint a sunset with this, and you can control the colors. And the other thing is, like with those trays, they won't. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Happy to help you out. like when they do the trays, the other thing that I always saw with younger students or ones that haven't painted very much is they wouldn't put enough water in. They would put just a little bit in those Crayola things, and then it would be really dry. And so they would try to paint, and they'd get frustrated because nothing's coming out. So they either do that or they put way too much water, and then it's, like I said, it's running together. So I think the paper kind of solves that problem. So. Oh, yeah. I started using liquid watercolor paint for my after school class. And I got those little containers that I would just put a lid on, because I found that like even if they even had the open container, I wouldn't even worry about it, because if it started to condense or something, like then if you just added water, it brought it right back to life too. So yeah, I kind of gave up those Crayola trays quite a while ago. Yeah, I know that, and especially when you use watercolor paper on watercolor paint on watercolor paper, there's just nothing like it, because those colors just kind of love each other. So, thank you so much for coming, Darian. Is there anything else you want to know about this? I had my other. This is my example, just as last few ideas. My paper that I cut in half, the 9x12. This is a 6x9 cut in half. So this is a nice kind of layout for doing 3. But if you were shorter and you just want to make cards, you could cut each one into 4 sections. I think, yeah, this is a quarter, and then you could do 2 dandelions, and that would make a really pretty card, and that would make things go further. And if you had, it'd go faster too, because you're just drawing 2 dandelions, obviously. So that's another option. That's about all I can think of with all the things I've learned about making this. Is there anything else you're trying to figure out for your school year? 2 or 3 colors? I guess if they haven't done a lot of painting, I think probably 2 colors is probably best, because they do run a lot. And this took, if you had just, actually, what I'm thinking about is like this one. I started with dark orange, and then I did light orange, and then I did 2 strips of pink. So these 2 colors are so similar, you can't really see the difference. So that's why I'm thinking it might be just a case for these 2 colors that they're similar. But so maybe if I show some other colors, those 3 definitions would show up better. I guess it might be worth experimenting, because like if I had to do this again, I would just split it like half orange and half pink. I don't think it was worth having 3 colors, because they don't really show up. So probably the safest thing to do is just go with 2, because if you went with 3, like I said, if they're too similar, it's not really going to be worth it. And if they're too different, then they might get a little bit muddy in between 2 or something. So that's my guess. Could I have several strips cut out of different colors and let them? Yeah, you could do that. Oh yeah, top one color, bottom. That would be a good idea, because I do know I've done like blue and this purple that's in here. I did a couple of projects like this violet, because I'm finding out like these lighter colors may not show up that much. Certainly this very light yellow probably doesn't leave very much behind. I haven't really tried it, but I know this really dark purple, like, this navy kind of blue, that always worked well. I think I did once a dandelion with the super dark purple, and then that royal kind of sky blue color, like this color. It's hard to see it when they're like this. So this is a really pretty combination too. They could have a blue sky, and then they could have this, you choose the darkest purple blue there is, because that makes a really pretty color, and that always looks really good with the blue too. That would be great. And then you're giving them the option. 2 primary colors overlap, make the secondary color. Oh, that's a good question. Like if it was, the only thing is, I should try that, because that would make a really good lesson to learn. but I would, like I said, that this light yellow, I'm guessing that that's not going to leave very much pigment. But if you did something like the red and the yellow or the green, I'd have to try that, because if the yellow isn't very potent and it's kind of really light and the other colors are dark, the idea might be there, but it might not translate just because the yellow doesn't have any oomph to it. Red and yellow. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll have to try that, because that would be a great lesson to teach, to add that into things too, because like the only thing that happens when you use tissue paper like this is, you, instead of painting, you're missing out on the mixing stuff. So it's a trade-off. But maybe it leaks out more color than what I'm thinking. Or there is this other kind of, maybe this would work for a good yellow too. It's kind of like a orangey yellow, but it's maybe when it's bleeds out, maybe it's more yellow. I will try that, because that would make a good lesson. I know what I hear from teachers is that they try to cover as many bases as they can. So if you had a lesson about drawing dandelions and name the seeds, and then, a little bit of science lesson, and then you had those three colors, and I bet the students would really remember that too, because they're putting, here's my yellow, here's my red, and then there's my orange, so that they get like a visual picture of what happens when those colors run together. A good idea. But yeah, that's what I would do. So I'll be curious to see what happens if you try that out and give them their choices. And then I don't know if I was talking about, like, if I was doing this with a group, this costs like $8 or so. Maybe there's a cheaper way to get it. But I know that given you don't use very much, I bet I could use this in a classroom. If I went around and did 3 dandelion covers for everybody, I bet it wouldn't even use half of this. So let's say it's like $5 for, the only catch is that this brush is really kind of the perfect brush. So you could make a station and maybe have this secured somewhere so it doesn't fall over if you're concerned about that, but have a place where they come, and then what they have to do is kind of clear off the cement so that it's not making blobs, and just use that, and then just do their circles. But if they come and all they need is to have this for like a minute or so, just go for swish, 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 and then they could go back to their desk and do the other things. So I'm sure there's ways of working around. You don't have to buy, one of these for every other student or something like that. So, okay. I'm glad you're trying that. Super. My son just asked me how my live is going because he's my tech guy. He's 25, almost 26, and he's the one who's been making my videos for me. So when I told him I was going to go live, he like rolled his eyes and said, "Mom, you have to have streaming software for that." And I said, no, I'm just going to go basic. You can get, if you've ever seen streams where people have their faces and then they show their desk, or they have their friend talking and them talking, you have to pay for a service for that. And if that was something that I wanted to do in time, then I'd go for it. But right now I just want to be able just to get on and talk to people, even if it's just chatting. It's certainly better than, it's a good place to start. So I'll have to tell him it went fine. And my friend Darian came to see me. Cool. Was there anything else you need help with? The thing I was gonna, like, would this be helpful? Are you guessing if I did this every Sunday afternoon, because just for the summer? Because I was told by my other coaching group that I'm with, some ladies do some online streaming things. They go live, and they said the more often you go on, the more consistent you are, the bigger your audience can be. So I was thinking, at least for right now, for the next couple, or actually so maybe on Sunday afternoon for a few months and see what happens, if that works for you. Oh, great. Your son is your tech guy too. Yeah. I know what will we do without them. Although he teases me as much as he helps me out sometimes, but I'll take it. Whatever works. Oh, Becky. Oh, hi, Becky. Oh, drop me in. Say hi. I'm just figuring this out for the first time and also figuring out how to let people know how to find me. It's like easier said than done. So I'm glad you're here, Becky. Or is that, oh, Darian, you're telling me that. Becky Cooper. Hi, Becky Cooper. I am happy to go over my project. My friend Darian stopped in here and I told her all the ins and outs of what, oh, and your children too. Okay, hi. Hi, Becky Cooper's children. Glad you're here. Did you come to see this project? Because I have all kinds of advice about how to make these dandelions. Oh, they're your tickies. Okay. Yeah. What will we do without them? So I'm glad I have one. Like if I get in too much of a panic, I know there's somebody to go to. So my project that I was kind of featuring today, that if you came here because of it, it's this dandelion project, and it's using a permanent marker to draw the dandelion, and then rubber cement to mask out like the paper so that it stays white while you paint. And then this bleeding tissue paper. It looks like regular tissue paper, but it bleeds. It's a special art paper that you have to get from the art store, and it has to say bleeding tissue paper on it. Otherwise it won't do anything at all. So don't go get Hallmark kind. It doesn't work. It has to be this. Okay, so there are your tickies. Okay, good. I would be happy to run through this because this one's a little more unusual than my average how to draw project. So I thought it might be kind of fun just to say, here's the things I learned since I've made a couple of these now, some tips that I have. And if you're doing it, with a big group of kids, it is possible. This is the rubber cement. There's possible ways to work with that and still be safe, I think. So rubber cement to block the bait. Okay, great. All right. So thanks, Darian. Let me know if you have any other questions, Darian, because I was just trying to figure out like if next Sunday is another good time I can talk about my art journals that I'm really happy to share more information about, or I might have another project. But at any rate, right now I'm thinking of just kind of doing this every Sunday afternoon just to see how I can help people and what kind of questions come up for those that are wanting to make things for the summer or for their classroom in the fall. Great. Okay. So Becky, here's what the quick rundown of this project. It does help. It's really important. Oh, you've used bleeding tissue paper. Oh, great. So you're familiar with that. What I was starting out with my list of supplies, I really recommend that you work with watercolor paper. And I happen to find this brand. There is a link on my website. It's You Create. It is an affiliate link, but that's how I stay in business. But this company right now has this crazy sale with 50 sheets for like $11.18 or something like that. So you can buy this, or you can get, if you have other watercolor paper, that's fine too, of course. But it's just, I try to tell those that aren't familiar with watercolor paper that it really makes all the difference in the world with how the colors come out, whether you use tissue paper or just regular watercolor paint. Because if you try, even your average multimedia paper, I find doesn't really make the colors so bright. So watercolor paper, if you can, just even for just a special project like this, start with that. Then you need to draw with a permanent black marker so it doesn't bleed. I use these Sharpie ones, but there are other ones that are good these days too. It just needs to be super fine tip, like this. Really, you can see that, super tiny and skinny. Oh, can I see how watercolor paper would help? I can see it would help. Yeah, when you use regular paper, yeah. And even sometimes if kids get over ambitious with anxious with the color or whatever, that it can make holes in the paper too, but watercolor paper is sturdy. And this stuff is 140 pounds. It's really thick. So anyhow, start with this. You could start with half a sheet of, this is 6x9, or if you're trying to make little cards, you could cut this in half and make a picture like that and just do 2 dandelions. And then you would get 4 pictures out of a sheet of paper. So, but if you're doing this one, like I did on my blog, you start with that. And then I do have a step by step because it's hard for me to do it here. It's more like a question and answer kind of thing I'm trying today. So on my website, what I recommend is you start like with the centers of the dandelions, and then you draw the stems below them. Then draw these little, I guess I could take this off. Draw the stems that are radiating out, and draw all those. Try to make them look a little different so they have a little variety. And then you're drawing these little caps at the end. What I did is I drew like a U shape and then a little V shape inside, and then I put little dots at the end so they look kind of like little fancy seed stems, I think is what they're technically called. So, okay, so Darian says, I have a 130-pound cardstock that I wanted for my printer, but it doesn't go through. Would that work? Cardstock, well, I wouldn't, if it's not watercolor paper, I don't think it's, even though it's nice and heavy, I'm pretty certain that the colors just wouldn't show because it's all about that watercolor texture. That's what makes it work. So you could try it out. I've been known to be wrong, but I would kind of predict that you're going to need something even lighter. It doesn't have to be 140 pounds. I think there's 90-pound watercolor paper. It's not about the weight, but it is about the way the paper's made with that. So, okay, yeah, you got a lot of that paper. Well, I'm sure there's something that's going to be perfect for. So with the drawing, Becky, you draw this all out with your marker. If your kids want to do it with a pencil first, they could, but it's a lot of erasing. So I would encourage them not to sweat it. My little lines are not perfect. They're kind of wobbly. And just draw them, and then it'll be a nice, clean kind of drawing. It won't have a lot of gray lines when you're done. After that, then you're going to use this rubber cement. And this, I was telling Darian, it's not cheap. This is about $8, but there's so much in here that I'm sure it could do about 50 of these pictures if you yourself were going around and spreading it on. So the only catch is that you need to have, I'm going to put this down, this brush it really works best. I wouldn't use another brush because I wouldn't know how to clean it, but you need to wipe off the extra like this. And this is just this sticky, weird stuff. And then you go over your drawing and make circles like this. Go over a couple of times because you want it to be pretty filled in. You don't have to make it totally solid because it's kind of cool when it looks a little see-through, but go around over it like 2 or 3 times like that. Like that, like that. If you happen to make another blob here, like I did actually when I made my other picture, don't worry about it. You can just let it dry for a minute and then you rub it off. But then that is, once you have your drawing and your rubber cement blobs here, then you're ready for your painting. So I used blue and green, and I was cutting strips about this wide. They're like a 1 inch tall and as wide as the paper, because that just made it kind of easy. It seemed like if I made it any skinnier, it was going to get really tedious. And if I made them bigger, you're trying to keep it wet as you work. And if they were bigger, it might be hard to keep them all wet. So this kind of seemed like the right size. And it needed to be, this actually was blue, goes up here. So all you do to paint your picture is you use your brush, get it wet, and then just put some water down here and then put your tissue right on top of it, and it's going to stick. And then you need to go over it again because the only way the paint comes out is from being really wet. So go over it like that and paint it and get it really wet. And then this is made from about 3 strips of blue. And then I switched over to my green, which look kind of like this. And then cover them all. I would put on it's going to get a little messy because the color is going to start to bleed. So put it on some newspaper or something. And then even when it's all done, go back with the water one more time and look for any dry spots, because any dry spots that you see are not going to have any, they're going to end up being white spots, so that you need to go over them and then just let that set for about maybe 5 minutes. I've only experimented a little, but I know that if you take them off right away, the color has not really saturated. On the other hand, if you came back the next day when it's completely dry, then you're not going to be able to do a little touch-up work. And what I mean by that is when you take this off, if you do see some white spots, if you know, and it's only been like 5 minutes, there's still going to be some little puddles of that paint. So all you do is use your brush and then fill in those spots. I had it both times I made my little paintings here. This one had little white spots, not many, just a few. And you can kind of do that touch-up work when it's still wet. So that's why this is a good thing to do all in one class. So, and once you've done that, then your paper is going to be damp, and this rubber cement is still going to be here. And what I was telling Darian, that I would recommend letting that dry overnight, because if the students try to rub this off too soon, it might just, if they got too rough with it, it might tear the paper. So and nothing is going to be lost by waiting a day. So they could come back when the paper is really dry and then rub it off with their fingers. So let me see with your questions. Okay, so Becky says cardstock is going to take the paint differently because it's slick. It would probably run more. So yeah, thanks, Becky. Yeah, I've found that too. Cardstock is good for tempera paint or something that goes on top of it, but not anything like watercolor paint. And Becky says I would pour it into some trays for each table and buy some makeup brushes for the students to use. Oh, yeah, that's true. Or I bet there's some little containers, like maybe those little souffle containers with lids, so that you could use it for a couple of classes. You could do that. Yeah, any kind of cheapy little brush, because I found this, all this is like a 50-cent brush from somewhere. It's flat and it's got thick bristles. It does not have to be fancy. I think it looks cool. If you had a soft brush, it might make it a solid blob. So get some kind of cheap little brush that you don't care about, or that you can use again. And then, because I think that textured kind of look is what makes this kind of fun, where it has that scratchy look. It's mostly white, but then it's scratchy on the edges. Oh, my son says hi. Hey, Matt. my friends Becky and Darian are here. That's my tech son, Matt, saying hi. He's probably going to tease me mercilessly when I'm done, but it's okay. I made a YouTube Live. So, yeah, Darian says hi, Matt. Okay, so that's my thing about, and then I think I was telling you, Becky, that, I was talking to Darian about other color possibilities, because if you buy the bleeding tissue paper, it probably all looks a lot like this, where they have just this range of colors. And I haven't tried all of them, but I do know that the green, the dark green works really great. And I do also know that this really dark purple, oh, here it is, works great too. I've done some projects with that royal sky blue and purple. So Jaren was thinking of, because she has some students, she wanted to give them the choices. So if she cut out different strips, and they could choose like 3 strips for the top and 3 for the bottom, so they have a choice about what they want it to look like. In my mind, I was kind of like thinking, what if it was rainbow colored and there were 6 different ones? But I have a feeling that's just like, it's not a nice idea, but in reality, this yellow that's in here, it's not, the one yellow is really super light. I don't know if you can see it, super light. And then there's a golden yellow that might work a little better, but it seems like, oh, I could have 6 strips of different colors. But if the one thing about tissue paper is some of them colors are really punchy and bold, and some of them are kind of pale. So that's the one thing you don't have control over, is how the brightness of them. So I may experiment with that sometime, because like Darian was thinking, it could be a lesson about mixing colors of, red and orange, or red and yellow, and have orange in the middle. It would be great if that worked out, because then students could learn one more thing about it too. But so let me see, any questions? Darian says you rock, Matt. The yellow doesn't show up well if the students get too much water on it. Yeah, I have a feeling. So this stuff is great for certain things, and I do love that like I could work with young kids, and you're not worried about always cups of paint spilling over. And you didn't have to kind of deal with that. It was much neater, and you could control it, and it kept the students from, splashing 3 colors on and then stirring it, because it was, it's fun, of course, but if you're trying to do a rainbow or something, or some kind of gradation, it takes a little bit of like a light hand to restraint, I guess is a word, to keep things, this color here and not mush them all together. And when you work with these tissue paper strips, it's one great way of controlling that. So I wouldn't, moral of the story, I think I would not, certainly get rid of my paint and switch everything over to bleeding tissue paper. But for certain things like this, when you want to give kids a choice about choosing 2 different colors, it's a great substitute. So, are there, excuse me, do you have any other questions, Becky, about this process? I do think it's a really fun summer project. It would certainly make a fun one to do at home too, because it's so easy. It makes a good summer picture. Thanks, Darian. Thanks for hanging out. I think I've kind of got to go. So I'll try to wrap this up because I want to keep this live so that the recorded live so it doesn't go too long. Oh, yeah, you're very welcome, Becky. I'm glad you liked it. I'm going to try to make some Happy New Year cards when I go back. Oh, that would be pretty. Yeah. Oh, and one other thing, I think I used this for Halloween. I did a picture that was like a silhouette, and I did like a drawing of a tree and then a branch. And if you draw it all with a permanent black marker, so you have a really black silhouette, and then you do the gradated strips to make like a sunset, it made a really cool Halloween picture. So I'll probably be trying something with that too, because that again would work great for young students if you're trying to have them make a kind of really pretty bold sunset for Halloween, but you didn't want it to look, or you didn't want to deal with, all the paints of the little cups of color too. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. I will try to do this. Well, I'm going to do this again next Sunday. And so you guys are welcome to come back. I'll think about what I want to do. I do know that I'd like to show more of my art journals, because this system that I have used for years, I've been posting about that for a while, but so I could tell you more ways of how that's worked for me. I used to have every student in the school that I was teaching at Dixie Canyon. I did this for like 5 years, from 2nd grade to 5th grade. These journals, they brought in their own cereal box, and I would chop it and turn that into the cover. Then I got 2 book rings from the office. I've got a hole punch, a 2-hole hole punch from Staples for like $15, and used it for 15 years. And then I filled it with the drawing paper, and it was great because they could then open this up and put their own picture inside when they're done. If they had things that they weren't finished, then they could go back and do that the following week. The other thing I liked is that like I think I could give them like different colored paper, like some black paper. They could make their picture and then put it in, so you weren't just stuck with one kind of paper for the rest of the year. You could kind of take it 1 week at a time and give them blue paper or brown paper. So anyhow, I've got all kinds of things that I like to talk about with that, because I just think it worked so well for me, and the teachers really liked it. So I try to kind of sing the praises of that idea too, because I think it just helps a lot of people out. So, oh, good. I'm glad you like it. Okay. What kind of markers did you use on the black paper? Oh, those are great. I can show you those next week. That is, it looks really cool, doesn't it? Those are those Crayola metallic markers. They're like $7 for a box of 7 colors. It's not, not cheap, but not that expensive. Not like some of the really fancy ones. And this was all made with just Stabilo markers. I had a template for that. So actually just a template, and then the project is about students drawing their own patterns that go inside. But yeah, that black, I love, if you haven't tried it out before, cardstock black paper and metallic markers from Crayola are amazing. Students love those. So in fact, okay, then maybe I'll find a project that talks more about that next week. Great. So yeah, Crayola metallic markers. I can show you a picture, but if you Google that, they're big and fat, and they sell them at Staples. They're all over. So I think they're easy to find. All right. Well, I will let you guys go. Thank you so much for joining me. It was fun having you. And it's nice to make new friends, even if it's just on the chat line. But thanks so much. Have a great day. And I will see you next week. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.